Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So I tweeted about this the other day because I've been looking forward... Well, okay, let me rephrase that. The book was announced. I thought it was a cool idea. And I was looking forward to the book when it was announced. Then they announced what the book was going to be about. And I was a little bit less interested. And then the book came out. And begrudgingly, I bought the book. I read the book in one day. And I said that I was cursed child mad. If you listen to the podcast, you know how I feel about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I feel like it kind of breaks the canon. It feels silly. It feels like Flashpoint meets Harry Potter, down to the fact where he's got to go back in time and let his mortal enemy kill his parents for the betterment of society. It's what's it called? It literally is Flashpoint Harry Potter. This book isn't quite that. It doesn't quite do anything so, immersion breaking in that regard. It just feels very creepy. And I'm talking about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the newest book from Suzanne Collins, the prequel to the Hunger Games. Now, this book takes place at the time of the 10th Hunger Games, which would have been 10 years after the war. We meet Coriolanus Snow, who's played by Donald Sutherland in the movie, for reference. He's, the bad guy. And by the way, I'm going to talk about the movies a little bit, too, in this. I still think he's got probably the best scene in the entire quadrilogy of movies. I think my favorite scene is him talking to Katniss in Mockingjay Part 1 through the teleconference. And him talking about, you really think I don't know your friends are in the Capitol right now, going through the hotel? Remember, there are fates worse than death, and remember, I'm the one who told you that. He's just such an unapologetically evil villain in the movies and the books that it's just, this feels out of character. And problem number one is the way he talks. He talks the way you would expect him to talk in the book. And based on how he is in the books and the movies. He's got this very grand sense of self-importance, which is proper characterization. It's how you would anticipate him to be as a young adult. The issue is, in continuity with the previous books, he'd be 13 at this time. And yeah, there are 13-year-olds with that grandiose sense of self-importance, but that makes him younger than his tribute he's mentoring, Lucy Gray. And therein lies the biggest problem with this, is that the whole relationship between them gets turned on its head, and then he goes to be a peacekeeper, and it still just doesn't quite feel right. Maybe they're trying to make him, if he was 17 here, 18, it'd be okay, that makes sense, but really there's a very small window where what happens in this book is okay purely from an age standpoint, considering Lucy Gray is 16. And I feel like this book hits creepy on so many levels. It's just I don't know if it's meant to be romantic and I'm just missing it entirely, but it's not. It's just creepy in a way where it's on top of the fact that he's either way younger than Lucy Gray is, and he's still acting like an adult, which is just weird, or he's way older than Lucy Gray, trying to get into college. And that's the thing, is he's trying to get this scholarship to the academy to try and pull his family out of poverty. It just doesn't quite feel right. At no point does this feel right, because nothing that we see about this character, between him mentoring the tribute from District 12, falling in love with the tribute from District 12, and then that going from that to, oh look, they're holding hands, I want them all dead, it doesn't quite mesh properly. And I know that was about all the tributes and Catching Fire. None of that feels right. And I think the best thing about the book is that a lot of his suggestions end up going into becoming, into what the Hunger Games become at the time Katniss is in it, and ultimately leads to his own undoing, be it the betting, the buying stuff for tributes, the mandatory watching, all this kind of stuff are all his ideas, and it kind of leads to it. But this is someone who we see throughout the book gets rapidly desensitized to the evils of not desensitized, but like, he doesn't numb to what the Capitol is doing. He kind of looks at it and he sees it's wrong. And his best friend's like, no, this is wrong. And this kind of, I was thinking about how to phrase my issue with this, and I thought about it. A movie came out 2 years ago. It was a prequel as well. Solo, a Star Wars story. Very similar kind of situation, where you have, what's it called? The story about where Han Solo, came from, and how he's got his start as a smuggler, and all that nonsense. And when you have a prequel, there are two real, there are two real ways you can handle a prequel. A factual account of what happened to kind of not lend, like, to add background to what's going on. Like, think of the Star Wars prequels. They don't, like, change the original trilogy. They just kind of tell you what happened beforehand. They kind of set the stage. Then you have stuff like Rogue One, which doesn't set the stage. Well, it does set the stage for, for, A New Hope, but at the same time, it also changes the frame. It changes the way you see the movie. And that's why my favorite thing about Rogue One. When you watch it, it changes it gives you background to the point where it changes your mindset about the movie. Because we know what happens immediately leading up to it, and we know where it ends off, think about how that changes think about how that changes everything we see in A New Hope, where it's like, it's immediate. Everything seems, after watching Rogue One, everything in A New Hope becomes a lot more frantic. It becomes a lot more rushed, and it completely changes the way you see the movie, because we don't have any frame of reference for how long the Empire's been chasing Leia and the Tantive 4, which I'm mispronouncing, I think, based on how they pronounce it in the audiobooks, but we have no frame of reference for that. Then Rogue One happens, and it's like, oh, they just stole the Death Star plans from Scarif. They just stole them. So they have to, this is fast now. Like, they're really racing the clock here. Like, and it completely changes the frame of reference of the movie, for the time frame. Now, if we look at what this does, this is not one that's going to alter, it doesn't give anything meaningful to the backstory for why the Hunger Games are the way they are. It's like, the games are still there, they send kids to fight to the death in an arena, and then that's it. And then it's like, everything about this should tell the story of why someone went from the Capitol and one of the biggest families of the, of Capitol lifestyle, and tell a story of how he starts a rebellion, and how he goes to institute systemic change from the top. Sorry, I had to relocate. But when you read the book, it's like his best friend, or one of his best friends, ends up getting bitten by snakes and seriously poisoned for lying to the head game maker. They throw him into the arena to save one of his friends from District 2. And he ends up killing someone in the arena. He kills one of the tributes. And it's like things like, and then what happens is, it's like they play it as, see, it like the arena turns you into turns the tributes into monsters, and it's like, yeah, but he killed someone too. It's just the fear for your life, and all of these things would radicalize someone, would radicalize a rational person. And it's like, look, I get it. He's got to weigh the he's got to weigh the risk reward of, not helping his family versus, doing the right thing versus helping his family. But it doesn't. No part of this feels like it's handled properly, and it reminds me a lot of the end of Mockingjay in that regard, where you get to the end of Mockingjay and she's kind of completely lost sight of what the series is about. And I don't know. It's not disappointment in this, because I didn't expect much going into it. It's not like I expected going into it for it to be dazzled, but it's just not. It's just so weird that we look at this person and we see him go through all of this, and he's still become the person he is at the end of the book, a person who's willing to torture and kill civilians to keep their power. It's like there needs to be more books between this and the 74th Hunger Games that explain what happened. Because there's a lot that needs to happen, because I don't buy it. I don't buy that transformation based on where this book ends off and where we see him in the end. And everything that happens over the course of this book. It's not sold to me in the way that a prequel should sell it. It's kind of like a contradictory story. What I was saying about Solo is that when you watch A New Hope, you see that Han, Han's character arc in the movie is doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. In the beginning of the movie, when we encounter him, he's a smuggler, he's a scoundrel who only goes in for the money. And then he gets to the Death Star and he decides to help out because, there's money involved. And then he gets rescued, and then as soon as he gets back and gets paid, he leaves. And then he realizes, I gotta do the right thing. He goes back to the Death Star and saves the day. And ultimately it's a selfless act of heroism. And I think that at the end of Solo, when they show him, he does the right thing to help the origins of the rebellion. And it's like, it doesn't feel right, because now it's like it kind of undercuts his emotional arc. Where if you show someone in chronological order and you show them Solo, and then show them Rogue One, and then show them A New Hope, him leaving and then coming back now is a foregone conclusion. Not a surprise, and not a meaningful change to his character. Because we know he's going to do the right thing. We've seen it happen. And that's the same thing here. It doesn't feel like you've undercut the character arc of the previous books with this prequel. And I hate when people say, you've ruined my childhood, you've ruined this, but because quite honestly, you can't really ruin the child. You can't ruin a previous movie by a new movie. You can't ruin a previous book by a new book. But what you can do is you can irreparably change the way you view the movie. And a sequel won't do that, because like saying all of this is for nothing because in the sequel this happens. That's different. You can say that doesn't impact the previous movie. A prequel does. A prequel does provide background and framing for the current movie. And I think that's what the big disconnect here is. I think that this was a very poorly executed book, unless there's more coming. If there's more coming, then I'll gladly, change my statement on this. But there needs to be more. Otherwise, this makes no sense. So yeah. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You can tell me on Twitter at 30minreview. We will be doing a giveaway this week. I'm going to give away one of the Disney movies I got on Steelbook. I have the digital copy sitting in my bedroom. I got to take a look at which ones I have. And we'll be back later today with another episode about the Snyder Cut, which has finally been confirmed to be happening. And we'll have my thoughts on that later today. Until then, have a great rest of your day.